What should we do about the climate emergency?
The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived.
Can we do anything at all? And at what cost to human liberty and flourishing? While some are busy arguing about the science, most are neglecting some fundamental economic and philosophical questions.
It is still possible to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid the very worst of climate change, but only with dramatic, immediate climate action.
Paul Mueller, economist at AIER, gives his perspective on how to move forward and what are the unseen costs of the green utopia promised by proponents of ESG.
Oh, Jesus! Here it comes! Global warming!
Should we be focusing our resources and our time on preventing the Earth from warming? Or should we be focusing our resources and time on adapting to however the climate changes? One just sort of very obvious example of why this matters is if you look at the number of deaths from natural disasters, the number of deaths from natural disasters declines dramatically as wealth increases, right? So a number of years ago, there were two earthquakes. I think one was in Chile and one was in Haiti.
Chile's quake was much bigger than the one that rocked Haiti just last month, releasing 500 times more energy.
But the death toll in Haiti was, 50 to 100 times higher than what it was in Chile, just because they had less infrastructure, they had less emergency services, their buildings weren't built as well. Haiti was a much poorer, less economically developed country than Chile. And so the same kind of disaster was orders of magnitude worse for a country that was poor. And now we see this to some extent. If you watch some of the videos of like the UN climate conference, they have videos of people in sub-Saharan Africa or parts of East Asia with flooding and mudslides, and they're just, devastation, tragic humanitarian stuff. And they're like, these are the people who are suffering the consequences from climate change. And so we need to prevent climate change from happening to help them. It seemed like a very, very indirect, roundabout way to me of dealing. Like, no, what they need is economic development, right? If they had better buildings, better supply chains, vehicles, infrastructure, then they could actually handle a lot of these things much better. So instead of trying to cut emissions so that the world warms a little more slowly so that there's a little fewer superstorms or whatever, it's just, as you tie these things together, the conclusion becomes more and more precarious. So that would be as sort of a philosophy or an economics objection, right? Regardless of the exact science, that would be something to talk about as an alternative approach to reducing emissions. But even to the young people that you're talking about, Kate, and there's a lot of them, and I think this is very much a live issue for them. If we just did things above the board, I think a lot of the worst excesses of ESG would be prevented because people would really feel the direct costs. Is it really worth it to raise our taxes this much? Is it really worth it to have to cut back on how much I drive or these other sorts of things? Maybe it is, right? Maybe people will make that decision. Maybe politically we'll decide this is an important issue for us. We're doing, but as long as it's above board and clear, then people can make their own decisions. Companies can focus on being efficient, producing value at the lowest cost possible, given the constraints they face. And then we can sort of judge over time, are we happy with this? Are we not happy with this? Are we going to try a different way of managing the economy?
The problem, I think, is, as you obviously know, is that this is not the way that it happens, right? It's not coming from people deciding on their own. It's coming kind of from the top down, and it's coming from all of these kind of different outfits that are coordinating together and making these decisions for people.
No, Stan, I'm afraid us adults just let you children down. We didn't take care of our Earth, and now you've inherited our problems. We didn't listen. We didn't listen.
And I sent you this yesterday, and I would love to hear your comments on it. This is the Deutsche Bank in 2020. They wrote this white paper, right? And they said, if we really want to achieve climate neutrality, we need to change our behavior in all these areas of life. I know that eco-dictatorship is a nasty word, but we may have to ask ourselves the question, whether and to what extent we may be willing to accept some kind of eco-dictatorship in the form of regulatory law in order to move towards climate neutrality. So my question to you is, do you think that ESG is kind of changing this regulatory framework around these things and moving us kind of in that direction?
It is exacerbating this natural proclivity that people have to try to run other people's lives for their own good. And so you can think about, I mean, lots of examples come to mind. You can think about bans on certain size of soft drinks. You can think about bans on sort of kinds of hydrogenated oils. You know, you could say, yeah. So let's just take a separate analogy, right? If you said, all right, if we're going to live in a world where every person is going to be healthy, we're going to have a health dictatorship that is going to regiment when they exercise and what they eat. Yes, that's true, right? Like if you're going to try to get everybody this way, then you're going to have to force a lot of people to do that. But then the question becomes, okay, is it good to be healthy? Okay, sure. But then you kind of get into it. Well, what do we mean by healthy? And like, is health the only thing that matters? And what about other parts of life? And what are the kinds of things we have to do to force people to be healthy? Are those kinds of things actually abusive or violating people's rights, their dignity? And that is very sort of alien from what I've seen to ESG advocates. I don't see them saying, oh yeah, I wonder if we should respect people's rights. I wonder if, maybe there's potential significant abuses from an eco-dictatorship. It's just, is this thing is good? And, and they might be right about that. Like, so yes, hypothetically, a world with less emissions, all else being equal, sure, that seems like it would be a better world. But like, nothing else is equal. Like, there's so many trade-offs and costs and other sorts of, and so you can't just say, oh, this thing is good, and well, we might have to, break a few eggs, eco-dictatorship to get there. Like that does not follow, right? You can't do that. That's just really, it's not even moral reasoning, right? It's like, it's not just sloppy moral reasoning. It's like the absence of moral reasoning in a lot of cases, right? Where there's no appreciation of human dignity, human rights. There's no nuance in terms of the dangers of collective activity and political power being exercised. I mean, again, it's very similar to stuff that was said to the socialists, right, for decades, right? Yeah, that all sounds great, but how are you going to get there? What about alternative values, alternative options? So yeah, it's troubling. I mean, this is one of the most troubling things about ESG, and this is why it matters that it's sort of a one-dimensional moral crusade. They're just not willing to sort of to listen to or consider alternative values, competing values, trade-offs, and that is alarming.
To read Paul Mueller's series of articles on ESG, visit AIER.org.